What's up, guys? Welcome back to Malt Mondays. This week we're taking a look at the Glenmorangie 18-year-old.
In Scotland, would you accidentally drive up to Talisker?
When I first started drinking whiskey, Glenmorangie was probably one of my very favorite distilleries. And so the 18 was kind of like one of those aspirational whiskeys. It was one of those whiskeys that I had tried 12-year-olds and 10-year-olds from a bunch of distilleries, but I had never yet broached that 18-year mark. And so, this just comes in a beautiful looking bottle for one. So, when I was first getting into whiskey, I was much more allured by the presentation than I am now. I'm a little more jaded, but as someone starting out in their journey, I was very drawn to this bottle, the thick glass bottom, the beautiful box that it comes in. All of these things just kind of add together to create a nice presentation. And so, this box has a nice texture to it, and it's got a little bit of information on the inside, but really not that much, other than just saying that it's aged in oak casks and Oloroso sherry casks. What they call superior oak casks, whatever that means, some marketing. But I would like to see a little more information about the casks or about the blend of the casks, because what they're doing here is they're actually taking a marriage of casks, not a finishing, the way they do with the La Santa or the Quinta Ruben, where they take the whiskey after 12 years and put it in a secondary type of cask. What they're doing for this is they're actually taking most of the whiskey and letting it age 18 years in ex-bourbon barrels. And then there's some portion of the barrels being blended in that have been aged in sherry casks. So it's not a finishing, it's a marriage. Now, whether or not that impacts the actual flavor and the way the sherry presents itself in a whiskey, I think is pretty debatable. But it certainly gives the head distiller, in this case Dr. Bill Lumsden, a lot more control over the flavor that he wants to put into the bottle, because rather than dealing with a bunch of barrels that have achieved a certain flavor profile and now are being put into sherry casks for a period of time and trying to pull them out at the right time, you're actually taking whatever percentage you want, and that could vary batch to batch, of sherry and bourbon barrels, and blending them to create a consistent flavor profile. So it actually gives them a little more control. Now, that being said, again, on the bottle, marketing, extremely rare, 18 years old. This isn't extremely rare, but it is more rare than the 10-year-old. So I guess by comparison, I don't think you could sue them for false advertising. But that being said, Glenmorangie 18 is bottled at 43% ABV. So that's really nice, considering that some of its competitors, like the Glenfiddich 18, the Glenlivet 18, are bottled at 80 proof. Just getting those 3 extra percentage points definitely helps. And I would really like to try this actually a little higher than that. But I think, comparing it to what else is in the market at the same price point, which is $110 to $120, I think it's reasonable right where it is. Now, it's got a really nice color, but Glenmorangie is artificially coloring their whiskeys, as far as we know. So there's really not much to be said there, other than I will say I don't think they've done too much artificial coloring on this one. It would be a little too dark for 18 years in ex-bourbon only, but because there is some sherry cask used here, I think that little bit of a darker hue is not... I don't think they're being too egregious with the coloring here. Let me put it that way. So let's see on the nose. Right away, this is extremely refreshing, coming off of my last week's review of the Glenmorangie X. The nose here is just really beautiful. It's super harmonious. There's vanilla, There's some sherry, there's oak coming through. There's mixed peel, like orange peels and lemon. There's a little bit of honey on the aroma here. You can still smell some of the barley and some of the backbone of the Glenmorangie 10-year-old original here. There's even like a really nice subtle like milk chocolatey aroma. Overall, it's extremely floral, complex. The only thing that I would potentially knock this for is I've tried this a lot of times where I try it freshly poured, where I've let it sit for a few minutes, and I don't really feel like this whiskey evolves much in the glass compared to some other 18, 20-year-old whiskeys that I've tried where the experience kind of develops over time. So I don't think this really does that. But that being said, the longer you let it sit in the glass, a little more of those baking spices are going to come out, and a little bit more of the age is going to show with notes of the oak coming through, rather than some of the brighter, more citrusy aromas that come through up front. It's very light though, so if you're looking for a really bold, dark, heavy flavor or aroma, this isn't going to be for you. But as far as lighter whiskeys go, this has a really well put together nose. So let's see how it tastes. That is a supremely well balanced whiskey. It's a little bit spicy actually on the palate, which I think if you're a new drinker, you might mistake that for it not being smooth, which for an 18-year-old whiskey, a lot of people, what they're looking for is the smoothest whiskey they can find. So I think this has a little more pop and spice on the palate than you might be expecting, but it gives it a really nice amount of grippiness despite the lower proof at 43, compared to some of like Balveni's offerings at 46%. It gives it a little more grippiness, but again, this is a little thin overall on the palate, just because Glenmorangie has such a light distillery style that, in my opinion, when they go this light with the cask finishing, it just kind of leaves the whiskey a little too thin. I get a little bit of sherry. The vanilla for sure comes back. The milk chocolate's definitely there towards the finish. The finish is pretty long and dry, a good amount of dryness for this age. It's not over oaked by any means, but it's definitely going to be, if you're coming from like a 12-year-old or 10-year-old whiskey, you're definitely going to notice the extra age on the finish here. And actually, after tasting it, a little bit of like a shortbread cookie aroma comes through, because that's not really there on the palate so much, and so it kind of reinforces that flavor on the aroma. But a lot of the notes you're getting here on this nose are the same as on the palate. Apple, vanilla, a little bit of a honey like drizzle in there, a little bit of the maltiness, a little bit of sugar, and then just fading into a nice milk chocolate, subtle milk chocolate. Nothing like you might get with a port finish whiskey. A little bit of nuttiness, a little bit of dryness from the oak. The finish isn't super long on this one. I think that's probably, again, to me, distillery character of Glenmorangie, because they have those tall stills, the tallest stills in Scotland. They just produce a very, very light spirit. And so I do find that when I drink Glenmorangies, I'm always wanting just like a little more there. But that being said, as far as light whiskeys go, if you like stuff like Auchentoshan, Glenlivet, Glenfiddich, I really think this is one worth trying. And I think this is, I don't want to say significantly better, but I would choose this every time over a Glenfiddich 18 or a Glenlivet 18-year-old. It's a little more of an interesting whiskey to me. It doesn't taste flat the way like Glenfiddich 18-year-old does. It's just got a little more liveliness, balanced out with the age on the finish. So final thoughts, at $120, I think this is worth buying. I definitely think there are some maybe better value whiskeys you could find in this price point, like a Balvenie 15-year-old single barrel, I think is probably overall a better whiskey. But that being said, if you're looking for the lighter, more ex-bourbon heavy flavor profile, I think this is going to do it for you. And if you're not wanting something as intense as, that Balvenie 15, I think this is much more in line with like a Balvenie 17-year-old Doublewood, although that has a little more sherry influence to me than this does. I think I would still say the Balvenie 17 is slightly better overall, but it's it's pretty close. So I definitely think this beats out some of the other competitors right there. But if you want really light, Speyside, more delicate floral aromas, this is a good one to pick up. So let me know down in the comments below what you think of the Glenmorangie 18-year-old, whether you've had it or not, and if you enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and make sure you check out the Whiskey Uncut podcast that I do in collaboration with Bourbon Sippers. It's not just about Scotch the way my channel mostly is. It's kind of a hybrid between the Scotch and bourbon communities and trying to find bourbons that Scotch drinkers might like and Scotches the bourbon drinkers might like, as well as doing Asian whiskeys and Irish whiskeys and all sorts of other stuff. We just did an episode with Woodinville and had one of their distillery representatives come on the show. So that video will be coming out soon. But if you want to get it right now, go to the podcast service of your choice and download the show. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, cheers.